Hi guys, welcome to my channel. I'm Jen. I just started to start this video and my dog started making weird noises. And to me, those weird noises are meant to catch my attention and say an emergency, and it was not an emergency. So at this point, my little dog is crying wolf. So the video I wanted to make today was about your why. And when I first recognized I was attracting the wrong men and I was getting sick and tired of it, it was probably about like 2017. I'm going to say 2017. And I also was just starting to step into the world of spirituality. There was someone I knew who had posted like an angel card number pull or something. Like all you had to do was like comment underneath and they'll give you a card or a message, right? So that was the time when I first started that. And I just wanted so much better for my kids because I could see that I was like repeating certain things. Like I was attracting men that were like my father. And I'm like, that's not good enough. And I decided I was going to do different than my parents, right? So like, I can't accept this kind of behavior from somebody. And this man that I just, we had just broken up. I think it was in like 2016, 2017 or something like that. Like we still remain friends, but like it was a situationship now. And you just get tired of it, but not tired enough, I guess. And so I started with my kids, and like, that's what held me in a certain spot, I guess. Like I was still dealing with these people, but I was starting. It's what started me to start putting up boundaries, because when you first start boundaries, it's challenging. And so like, because I was raised in an environment where we were not encouraged to speak our mind or speak up or speak, really. Like my parents weren't interested in what we had to say. It was my word the highway in our household. And so it was like, you obey, you listen, you're not meant to confront me and my invalid opinions. And so when I started putting up boundaries, I recognized like my parents, like I just didn't want to be around them. Like mostly my dad. My mom was like, she wasn't aggressive or abrasive, but it was hard to be with her on the other end because she was so meek. And it was just hard to be around her because like that meekness really kept my father, who was aggressive and abusive, in our world, in our environment, right? So at the time I didn't recognize it, but I'm sure I had some resentment resolving that or regarding that. But I started putting up boundaries, and what this looked like was I had just moved into a condo, and I'd moved from a smaller house, and it felt like too much to do the yard work and all this stuff. So I thought maybe a condo would be better. But at that first place, like my dad had helped me move there from our previous family home in Culloden, and he was dropping by like, well, I appreciate the help that, and help in moving. He had a tendency to just drop by whenever he wanted to. And both me and my sister had stated, I need you to call before you come over. You can't just drop by. And I think he thought that if he called, then we would either leave when he arrived or we wouldn't, pick up the phone. And while I think my sister did that more often, I picked up the phone when I wasn't busy. Like I was parenting my kids by myself at the time. And my sister had her kid's dad, but also she was with a new partner, I think, at that time. So she had two men in her environment to help. And then other, like whoever's partners and stuff. And it was just me. At that time, the kid's dad had abandoned our situation and was not reaching out to the children, was not showing up, was not paying. And so it was me just trying to figure shit out. And so my dad would like just show up whenever he wanted to. And there's one time I remember he showed up, and because he had brought something with him, like some sort of like little small wood cabinet or something, because he used to bring stuff. He used to use that as an excuse. Like, I'm going to bring a present so I can show up. And while that is kind of sad, like, I don't need you to bring me anything. I just need you to listen to me. And like, I had no problem setting up visiting times for him, but he just wanted to do it when he wanted to do it. Like, it was his way. And he couldn't, in his mind, like, we were under his control because, I'm his daughter. So being his daughter, he had rights to visit with me whenever he wanted to, which is not accurate. I'm an adult. I have my own kids. This is my home. I pay the bills. And so this one time he had shown up, I think it was like around 5:30. And at the time I was working a letter carrier job and I was exhausted. So I would really run my route so I could get home earlier. Because once you were done your route, you could go home and get paid for the full 8-hour shift, right? So I figured like if I worked really hard, I could get home earlier and then it would allow me more time to, like before the kids would get home, either tidy up, you know, if I had to grab some groceries. If I wanted, I would normally, my regular routine would be to grab a coffee from Tim Hortons on the way home. I would enjoy my coffee. I would sit and just kind of what is it, like depress from the situation? Is that the word? Like where you just, there's a word for it. Not die. I would just sit on the couch with a coffee. I'm just going to stick with that. And it allowed me that kind of like exhale before, you know, I was ready to, you know, the kids would get home from school and then like, you never know what they're coming home with, you know, homework or notes and things. And then like there's the expectation of making them dinner and then laundry and making sure they have stuff for the next day. Like there's a lot going on, right? And what I would do sometimes, like depending on how tired I was, like sometimes I would take a nap after work. So this day, the kids were home. I'm pretty sure we'd already eaten and I was exhausted. So I was laying down. I was probably ready to sleep. I don't know if it was, there's a good chance it would have been in the winter. Winters and the summers like were extreme weather. So like that made it more exhausting. And I remember hearing a knock at my door, and I don't have friends at this time. I don't have friends now, but I didn't have friends at the time, like where people would just unexpectedly show up. There's no one coming over to my house. I didn't have visitors. And so that was like, who's at my door? And then to see that it was my dad, like I don't like people, like I don't like salesmen coming to my door. Like if I need something, I'm gonna go out and I'm gonna find it. I'm gonna Google it. I don't need people bringing your shit to my door. I don't like that. And while I've become more friendly regarding that, there are times when like if I'm tired and you're approaching me and you've come to my door uninvited, I have no guarantee on how I'm gonna respond. Like I'm not gonna be like physically aggressive. I'm not gonna start cussing and stuff like that, but I'm not gonna be friendly, right? You came to my door uninvited around dinner time. And so this is what my dad did. And I remember just like, I was so irritated that this is the time where I couldn't hide it. I was just like, what are you doing? No, you can't come in. I'm tired. You didn't call. And like, that's pretty much like I shut the door. And while, do I feel bad? I do kind of feel bad. But at the same time, this isn't like the first time he showed up unannounced. I have instructed him clearly from the past. He has been instructed clearly that he is not to show up unannounced. And there are times where what he would do is he would drive to my house, you know, in the area, and then make a phone call, and then, you know what I mean? It's like, that's not okay either. No, like I need notice, you know? And he just could never, see, that's the thing, like my mom did the most amount of the child rearing, if that's what you call it, and where she did the majority of the housework and stuff like that, right? I would like to say all of it, but like I wasn't in every place at all the time, but from my opinion, like she did the majority of the work. Like he would do the bills and financing, but like that's parts too. She didn't have a lot to do with that. But kids are, you know, finances, you don't have to argue with them. You don't have to convince them to eat their supper. You don't have to clean up poo and puke. Like finances are just a computer screen and the numbers. And while it can be frustrating at the time, like that's a lot different than dealing with kids and needing to manage them, you know, like raise them. That's a lot going on there. You have to keep your cool. You have to keep your calm, and ideally. And so yeah, he'd be the one, he would just keep, and I this time I was not having it. I was tired and I let it rip. And I was like, I barely opened the door. As soon as I opened the door and I saw it was him, I was like, I was angry, I was frustrated, and I was just like, no. Because you literally just came over, like I'm tired, and my kids get my first energy. Like me and my kids are entitled to my energy. You as a grown-ass adult who was never there for me as a child, do not have entitlement to my time or attention, no matter how much you think. But that's what he would do. And so that's when I first started putting up boundaries. And that's the thing, is like, he thought I was avoiding his phone calls, but I was busy parenting my children, you know, like, and he just didn't understand that because he wasn't involved in that part of the work. He didn't understand what that involved. And so when I started, then so yeah, I was, and I also had to recognize, like, I was starting to protect my kids also. Like, this is when I started putting up boundaries, and this is part of my why is like I had to start protecting my kids from my dad, because like on my kid's birthday, on my son's birthday, he would show up and he would be like, he talks about politics. He would talk about like the, you know, I think there's like an immigration issue that was happening at the time. Like he would just bring up the most like subjects. And that's what he would sit, he would plant himself. I remember him planting himself on the couch. You know, he might sit and turn on baseball and watch baseball, but there's no interaction with the kids. Like there'd be an initial like, you know, hug and say hi, because they were happy to see their Opa, because, you know, like I still think that's their Opa. And so I'm like, oh, you know, like you're coming into our house, you know, you can give him a hug if you want and greet him. I didn't force the hugs. I'm like, you can give him a hug if you want, kind of thing. And, but then like there was nothing else involved with the kids. If he did bring a present, you know, like there was excitement around that. He'd make a big deal. But then like after that, like the kids were not addressed or talked to. And the only time he would talk to the kids is when he wanted to try to bring up like a conversation that would double back to him. You know, I remember at Christmas, he would start asking questions. What would you do if you know, if you could do anything in the world, what would you be? And there's like, I would be, and it's like, okay, you didn't even listen for you know, you're not even in it for the kids. You don't even care what their answer is. He just jumps right to himself. And so like, this is where the boundary started, because I started recognizing like, this guy is exhausting and self-centered and not child-friendly. That's what it felt like. Like my dad is not child-friendly. And it was unfortunate because there are times like he seemed to have good intentions, like where he wanted to like take them on road trips and like educate them, like going to museums and things like that. Like I appreciate that part, but what would happen is he would drive for too long without letting the kids go to the bathroom. He would not feed them, you know, when they're hungry. Like it's all about him. You know, he didn't think, he's never had to care for kids in a way where it's like the kids were the focus. And so it's hard. And like, did he grow up in poverty? Yeah, he did. So like, is that his norm to like go long periods of time without using the washroom or, you know, eating food? Maybe. I know he knows 7-Eleven, you know, and the idea of packing a lunch, you know, he doesn't have a lot of money, so he's probably going to be packing his lunch. So like, that's an excuse. If he's, you know, careful with his money, then he's not going to want to eat on the road, and he's going to bring something with him. So like those are conflicting ideas too, like where he just doesn't want to stop and spend money. That's not it. That's not it. And so it got to the point where it was hard, because like I needed help, and I wanted my kids to have their grandparents in their life, because the kid's dad, their family was totally, I know where he gets his narcissistic traits from. It's on his family side for sure. And I had it on my side, but it's very different, because like a narcissist has a mother that enables him. And I was on this side where I had been abused by my father, who was very narcissistic. So I was like the under end of that. And then I had to be careful not to, because of what my kid's dad how he had treated them, I had to now be careful not to enable my kids, because they had such painful experiences in life, right? And that was a challenge. But like I'm looking for like my kids to spend time with their family, but the family is toxic. And then even, you know, so that was my dad. I had to start distancing from him. And then it came my sister, where like she would offer to have sleepovers all the time, but like, so the kid's dad and my sister introduced my son to Xbox, which, you know what, I like Wii. We played Wii, and that was a lot of fun because it gets you up and moving. And I don't feel like it's addictive. And now, you know what? Maybe video games aren't addictive, but it seems like they are, right? Like they're designed. It seems to be addictive. And so I was really frustrated, because like when I would, you know, she would want my son to come over, mostly, you know, and sometimes Alex, but sometimes not, which is weird, because she made it about like the boys just hanging out. I'm like, they're all cousins. What the fuck? And the more the merrier, I thought. And so it would be weird, because sometimes she'd be like, just Everett. And then what they would do is they would just sit and play Xbox until they fell asleep. Like there was no supervision. You know, there were snacks provided here and there, but like it was more like to keep her son entertained and busy than actually providing like some sort of wholesome like connection. And some people are like, oh, that's what kids do. They stay up all night. You do sleepovers once in a while, but this was way too often all the time. Like this was like the go-to. Like whenever they would, it wasn't just like, you know, that night, me dropping them off, them staying up to the all hours. And then if they would get back on the system again and play until I picked them up, like a lot of the time. Sometimes they would be out in the pool, but it just felt like this was her go-to move. And it was really frustrating because I'm like, and then, so like while this is happening, her and her partner would be having drinks and stuff. And so sometimes I would get a phone call and then there would be an argument from her. And like my kid is over there right now. And I would get feedback later that like Auntie Erin was calling you a bitch. You know, and so you can only imagine what, and I could see that she would talk to me about her partner all the time, about how negative he was. So I'm like, I had to realize at some point, okay, when I don't agree with her and when I do something, she's going back there and she's doing the same thing. It's kind of like a similar, like people talk about like triangulation in a way. I don't know if you would classify that, because it's like, he's talking to me about, she's talking to me about, she's talking about him to me. Wait, she's talking to me about him and she's talking to him about me. That's 3 people. And so it got to a point where it felt like it didn't feel nice to like just send my kids over there, because it felt like it was a lot of like, there was a lot of junk food at the time. I'm trying to like get my kids to eat right, you know, and the most of the time it was video games. And it was, and then while her and her friends drank there. And then she had some questionable friends that were coming by the house. And I'm like, my daughter's there. I really don't want that person around my kids. And so it really felt like the support that I had in place was not very supportive. And my mom, like she would take the kids, but it felt like she would always leave the plans up to the kids. Like she could never come up with something on her own. And so it felt like, again, like, you know, it's just like, be creative. Come up with something. You know, the kids, it's not here for the kids. Like, well, you know, I agree with it's, if she wants to say, hey, what do you guys want to do today? And they're like, hey, we want to do this. And that's cool. But for every time, it felt like she was always leaving the plans up to somebody else. And she would do that for us as well. Like she would never do Christmas herself. She wouldn't plan Christmas dinners or holiday dinners. It was always left to us. And don't get me wrong, I understand she endured a bunch of trauma from living with my father. I understand that. But she also chose a similar partner again after she separated from my dad. And instead of staying on her own for a longer period of time, she just brought in another version of him. And she has stayed with him repeatedly. And so it's hard for me to have too much empathy there, because it's like, Mom, you're doing the same damn thing. And so it felt like at that point where it's just like, it feels like she's now relying on my kid to make all the plans and do all that. So it felt like this is like, you're supposed to be the grandma. You're supposed to be the wise one here. You know, she has so many talents. She used to sew her clothes. You know, she used to bake and stuff a lot. Like she has her own interests and hobbies. And that's what I wanted. I told her, like, I want you to share yourself with my kids, instead of constantly like, so that's where I found her to be emotionally unavailable, because like she was never willing to be vulnerable with my kids and open up and like, you know, maybe they're not interested in that. Okay, we'll try something else. You know, it's just like, she never took part in that trial and error. And so that felt like, okay, like, so as long as it got to a point where my son wasn't hanging out with her anymore. And so it'd be just Alex, my daughter. And it got to the point where it felt like she wasn't interested anymore either, because like, you're not taking interest in my kids' interest. You're like, see, you're not absorbing information about them either. You know, like you're spending time, but you're disconnected. You're not connecting with the kids when you're together. You're doing things that you enjoy for sure. And she'd buy candy, but it's like, I'm trying not to get the kids to eat candy. Stop buying them candy. You know, like, and some people are going to say, that's what grandparents do. Well, you know what? When you get diabetes, tell me that's what grandparents do. Because the thing is, no, these are norms that people like support, and it doesn't just because a lot of people support this idea, it doesn't make it right. Do you know how hard it is to get out of depression, to get out of like low spots, to get out of like the things that sugar can cause is, and it's not on its own per se, but like, me trying to get out of my sugar addictions has been one of the most challenging things that I've had to work on, because it's been like a substance abuse, like sort of thing. And it's like a replacement for joy. So like, go do something playful with my kids. Don't just, you know, that's what I needed. And while I struggle, I'm not saying like I'm looking for perfection, but it just felt like I was trying to be open and communicate, and I just was not receiving any sort of change, and it got to the point where she just stopped calling. And it was after also I had a disagreement with my brother because he wanted me to show up. They would every year they come for Christmas, and they live in Australia. And so he wanted me to drop everything while they were here for the holidays and like abide by their schedule and just show up as many times as possible. And because he was never around, but he moved to Australia and that's his choice. That's cool. But at the same time, like you're not giving me any, it's like I'm filler. He treated me like filler, like elf on a shelf. Like, when events came, he's there. He wants me to be there. But like outside of that, nothing. And that's how my dad treated me too. It's like he wants to do things for Christmas because that's what families do. But outside of Christmas, it felt like, outside of his needing to show up when he wanted to, like he wasn't showing up for me when I needed him to. In the way, like, I mean, sometimes, but not consistent. It wasn't consistent. And you got to think, like, even as I say this, it sounds odd, but that's where these abuse areas are gray because you sound like it sounds weird when you say it, but when you actually experience it, it's totally different. It's like these people will give certain things to you and they'll use it as like a tie later, but like they didn't actually give much to you. Like they're using you for what you have and claiming that they're giving to you. Like, so like my sister would only have, it's not like she ever visited my kids without her. Like her son would go to her dad, like his dad's place, right? It's not like she ever would take my kids without Liam being there. Like that was like my kids were there to keep him company. That's, you know what I mean? It's not because she's trying to do something out of the goodness of her heart. And she tried to pretend like she was. And same with my dad, like helping me move. Like he would help me move, but I also feel like he has some sort of idea of entitlement to my home when the time comes, which is totally wrong. But that's what I mean. It feels like, because he did live with me at one point, and it feels like when he was living with me at that time, he did not listen to me. He was he lacked boundaries. It was all about him. It's just the imbalance. Like, it's just like, it's more about them than it is about you. And it gets to the point where you're just like, really? Like, but I'm not that way. And so when I started experiencing these things with my family, I had to start distancing myself. And it was in the why, which took a long time to get here. I had to start recognizing the why, because something would start filling off and I didn't have the why quite yet. Like, why am I not connecting to my brother anymore? Why am I not connecting to my family? Like, what is going on there? And I had to recognize, because it's not a family. It's conditional. The love is conditional. They only need me when I can show up and I can bring my kids for their kids to have someone. So like the kids keep each other busy. So now the parents don't have to do anything. It really took the responsibility off their plate. And like the kids are older, so it can watch the younger kids. And while I don't normally have an issue with that, the adults are still meant to like supervise the children to make sure that everyone's being treated fairly and respectfully, right? And I just wasn't always getting that either, because what I found was my family members' kids, they were using my kids as like, ways to brag about what they had, brag about their toys, brag about their experiences. And I'm like, you know what? You have your experiences. That's wonderful. You know what? I was in a situation where I couldn't afford those things. And while it's hard to watch, I also understood that like, this is my situation. And I'm responsible as a parent to provide these things if I want for my kids. I also recognize where these people were giving their kids material items in return for attention and affection. The affection came when they needed it, not when the kids needed it. And I recognized that my sister was telling my nephew, like, you're expected to feel this way in this situation, and that's controlling. She was very controlling of her son. And so she was very controlling of me. And so like I had to recognize also where it's like they're controlling of my kids, and it's just not, we had a situation where for Christmas, like all of a sudden my brother wanted us to start buying gifts all of a sudden now that he had kids, but he wasn't making that a yearly tradition until he had kids. Like where they would visit, they had bought presents, but like it's only because we were all celebrating together. Outside of that, there was nothing. So all of a sudden now he's got kids. He wants his kids to receive things from exterior family members, right? And there was a time where I'm like, okay, let's do this. I'm open. Like, if that's what you want to start all of a sudden, like, I wasn't really thinking back to like, well, why all of a sudden now? Like, why didn't you do it before? Because I'm like, you know what? I understand that things come up and you have new ideas. I get that. But what would happen is there was a time where it's like they're asking like, okay, so like, what do you want us to get your kids this year? And we were doing that sort of a communication over email, like what or messenger would be like asking what the other kids wanted. And so I would go and my kids were teenagers at this point, so they're well aware. And I would go and ask them, and I didn't respond anything from the other side. It was like crickets. And so that Christmas, they didn't receive anything from their Uncle James and their Aunt Mel. But I had asked them already, like, what do you want? Mel and, Uncle Mel or Uncle James and Aunt Mel are asking. And so when you don't receive anything when they've asked, it's like such a weird thing. And it's like, my kids have already experienced this kind of bullshit. How are you not sensitive? Like, they know I'm a single parent. They know the history of me and their kid's dad. They know how he's not showing up. They know about the ghosting. They know about aspects of these things. See, here's the thing too, is my sister and my brother gossip behind my back. And also my sister would gossip with my dad. They're very opinionated. And so they like to like, talk about like my life and how I was doing everything so wrong, which is interesting now. So it got to a point where it's just like really frustrating dealing with these people, because like it wasn't about me at all, and they're the type to always post like extreme presents under the tree. Extreme. Well, I mean, yes, they have a lot of kids, but it just seemed very superficial to me. It just seemed so like I would buy presents for my kids. Like I was the only one buying them. They weren't receiving presents from their exterior families or whatever extended families. I had to buy, like if my kids were going to get something, it's because I had to buy it, And then that slowly started changing too, because like now my brother's not sending them anything, and they're used to getting something because they've started it, and now all of a sudden out of nowhere they ended it. I'm just like, what is going on here? And there was no sort of conversation. It just was like a no response. And I just waited and waited, expecting her back. And I'm like, okay, I guess we're not doing the exchange. Which, to be honest, I'm like, I don't really care, because like they live in Australia. And I'm like, I can see every year they've already got tons of toys. So I don't know. So like, if this is about me and my kids, like, you know what I mean? It was very confusing. And I just got to the point where I'm just like, this is crazy. And so like for my kids, this is what also became the why, because I started recognizing these people were not for us. And the longer I stayed in connection with them, the worse it got. And now it took me some time, because I give people chances. I know I can change. So I would make excuses for these people. And same with like an ex that I was with, that I would keep going back to. And now I can also look back and see, recently I got to see how the kids seeing me get back together with Todd, that my ex, time and time again, how it was hard for them to watch that. It was hurting their heart. So not only was I being heartbroken by this man who refused to tell me the truth and hid a lot, and I was targeted. It was hurting my kid's heart too, because like having to watch my mom put up with my dad's behavior and then see that she did it again with another guy, that as a her being my mom, that is hard to watch. And so that is another reason of my why. I'm not dating right now because I am not ready to date, because I need to get in a place where I'm less emotionally unhinged and invested. It's not unhinged, it's invested, because when you over invest emotionally, then when that doesn't work out, then come the waterworks, then comes, because the expectations and the potential were attached to a stranger, like I don't even know them. And I didn't know what to look for. So like, that's what made me stay single longer and longer and longer. And while I would reconnect with this man, it was for less and less time each time. And so I had to learn through that trial and error, like, if I would have just settled with him and accepted like this is as good as it's gonna get, then I would have been miserable for my life. And my kids, can you imagine my kids? Like, what if I decide, like, I mean, you couldn't tie this guy down. He was never going to commit, right? But he was willing to come around every once in a while to Netflix and chill. That's all he could commit to. He liked having fun. That's what he was. He was a fun guy. But when you look at those fun things, drinking, it's not fun. Casual sex, because I was being honest with the fact that I hadn't been with anyone, and he was not being honest that he had been with God knows who hasn't he been with, I feel. And so that's not fun. A guessing game on who your person that you're sleeping with has been with. Because I would ask him, and he treated me like we were great friends because we would talk about personal things. So I assumed we're friends. And so I would trust that, like, when I ask him, like, have you been with anybody? Like, you're good, kind of thing, and nothing's going on. And he's like, yeah, no, I'm good. I haven't, I've been doing this. Like, he lied about what he was doing. He just lied. But at the same time, I'm like, I was not pressing the issue, right? And so the why became my life was still not, I was not getting what I wanted. I still was not receiving what I deserved. And so while it's my kids, it started moving on to like, I deserve better. Like my kids do too, but as we're progressing through this timeline, my kids are getting older. They no longer like, at first I was looking for a father figure, but these people are not father figures. And then it got to the point where like my kids are old enough now, I don't really need a father figure. So now I'm like, I need someone that is good for me, but they are going to be around my kids. So that matters. Eventually, like there's still, holidays and get-togethers, and whenever we spend time, like I'm gonna have my kids visiting my house, like you're gonna be around. If I'm gonna have someone in my house and around my kids, that matters. So it shifted from my kids, and the why became me. And what that was like, I deserve help and support, because this Todd guy would come over and he would eat my food. I had a cozy house. He would enjoy that. I'd maybe rub his feet or give him a massage or something, Netflix and chill, like all these comforts. I created a comfortable environment for him. And what is he creating for me? Insecurities, inconsistency, chaos, confusion. Like I deserve so much better. And that's when I started realizing it. And it was hard because it's hard to spot these things in people, because like, when I started recognizing it in people, like in relationships, then I was put in a position where I had to recognize my worth and choose me in a workplace. And I'm creating videos for that right now, to where like I had to walk away from a workplace, and that was scary. So like with this Todd guy, it was my idea that eventually we would figure things out, because what he was showing me was like, we're close, we're friendly, he's still sleeping with me, so he's still attracted to me at times. Like, so like what else is there? Like, you're attracted to me, you're taking advantage of my parenting skills and my homemaking abilities, so you appreciate all of these things, but you can't commit to me. And so I finally got to the point where he's never going to do that. After that ended in 2021, I fell into a workplace where it was the same thing. I was seeing the same thing show up, where I'm not being given what I deserve. I'm being treated badly. And it took me a number of time, like it took me a period of time to pick this up. And so it got to the point where I'm like, I'm not dealing with this anymore. And then it happened with another workplace, to where I could see a lot sooner, because the last was for 2 years and this one is for 6 months. And I could see where this guy was never gonna pay me. And the thing is, these employers will keep you around because they know that they can pile more work on you and you'll receive less pay. So even if they're paying you a manager position, you're still going to be doing more than your job description. And like, so I had to leave that environment, because not only was this boss lacking like discernment and judgment, like he couldn't figure out, like he's hiring these like a predator in the building. He doesn't care. He's got people who are abusive on the floor. He doesn't care. He's asking us to do unsafe things like sniff moldy products, and he doesn't care. HR doesn't care. No one, everybody knows what's on, but everybody's just okay with it. And that's when I'm like, you know what? I would really try to be, the advocate for other people. And I started learning, like, I just can't stand up for other people that can't stand up for themselves, because they're never going to come with you. And so in this environment, I also learned where I can't take people with me. I'm not meant to. If they want to follow me on their own accord, cool. But I'm no longer dragging these people that are kicking and screaming, that are feral, And now it's also confusing too, because my kids are adult age, in their 20s, their early 20s. And so there are times where it's like, another layer of boundaries was like, there are times that it make it hard to watch what they're doing in their life, because it felt like I was the one that was expected to clean up the mess, and it felt like a lot of pressure for me, because like what I've already experienced, like I have PTSD from being a single parent. And I don't think people understand that. I don't think people actually understand that, because even right now, as I'm struggling financially, I have 2 dogs, and it was supposed to be fun, and it's not fun, because I've experienced so much financial abuse and all this other emotional abuse, manipulation, and all these things that have happened, experienced over the few last years. And I'm like, and then I feel guilt because I'm like not giving to my dogs because I don't have the energy and I don't have the money to get someone else to do it. And like now it's not fun. And now I'm losing my temper, and where I'm yelling where I shouldn't be yelling. And I'm just not patient with them, where I should be more patient. And it brings me back to like, trying to parent my kids, where I have all these people that are just throwing things at me and like causing confusion and chaos and all this crap. And it brings me back to that time. And I'm trying to do so many things different, but it's a lot that I need to do different, because this is why I have such an issue with things like religion, because I was brought up in religion, Baptist, and they really I want to say train you to behave in a way that you're always giving to other people, you're always forgiving, and you're required, like you're required to be obedient, even as a fuck. And so you got to think, let's say, because there are some scriptures, and I don't have them off the top, I think it's Genesis, but I don't really know. I remember reading this scripture, and it talks about a woman being obedient to her husband, or a wife being obedient to her husband. Like, you know what, let's just remove that. If that's not even there, it doesn't even matter, because when you raise children to be obedient instead of educated, and being able to be discerning towards a situation and trust that you have taught them what they need to know in these certain situations, when you feel the need to control them out of fear and like micromanaging, like that's the problem. And these little girls grow up into grown women, so like you don't even need that scripture in there. It's like the assumption. It's the I want to say contorting. It's like contortionist. It's like trying to fit us into this box. And like, it's not just women and it's not just men, but there are some women and some men that are just like this. And they use these, and spirituality is the same way. And so, what I experienced is like, I would start seeing how these things are showing up in every environment. It started in my family, it went to my partners, and then it went to my workplaces and my coworkers and my bosses, and now I'm seeing it in the community. And now so like my why is becoming like, I have to become more independent and less codependent and less controllable, because like there is a group of people out there that require others to control them in order for their survival. It's such a weird concept, but like they can't be independent. And so as I worked through my whys, what was happening, I was experiencing a lot of health issues, and I'm trying to make changes towards my finances, and I'm trying to work on creating something outside of a 9-to-5. And the pressure, I'm getting pressed, because I'm like, okay, if I got to do this, I want to be consistent, but how can I be consistent if I'm, tired? And like, I had to work through my substance abuse issues, where like if I have sugar, I'm sensitive to sugar, so like I can't have sugar, but sugar is my comfort and my security blanket. And I'm all by myself, I'm all alone, I'm orphan energy. So like, what am I supposed to do for comfort when I'm constantly being thrown out, metaphorically, into the cold, and my finances are being affected? Like, you know what I mean? And so like these scenarios of my why are now becoming more me and self-love. And I'm like having to say, if I don't do these things, then I will not become successful. So like I have to watch what I eat, and I have to start implementing, like I want to work out, but I can't go right to Tae Bo, because my system is overworked, in so many different ways. And so if I go too hard too fast, then I'm on my ass. And whenever I go too hard, I notice that I require a comfort to kind of, supplement that, if that makes sense. And so I have to take it one day at a time. And the idea is like, I'm meant to go from overworked, to overrested, and then come back in the middle. And so my whys, I'm tracking them, is, like, what did you not have before? you didn't have any play, you didn't have any joy. So I got to bring that back in, because I got to counter the overwork with rest, play, and joy. Because when I'm overworked, I'm depressed and I'm miserable and I'm not moving. And when I'm playing, I'm doing things that I love to do, I'm moving, and it keeps me moving forward, remaining consistent. And so it's taken me a number of times to try to figure out what I'm supposed to be doing, because I do fall back into my, I want what I want when I want it. And so I'm going to do another video about like how I've gone through this, but the why is what will help you stop with the whatever your addiction is, whether it's a person and attention, getting attention from other people. It's using substances like ice cream, sugar, dairy, junk food, pizza, like those kind of things as comforts, like security blankets. It's getting out of your, like, so I spend a lot of time on screen right now because I'm so tired and I'm bored out of my mind. And it takes time. And once you realize how much time it takes to heal, that is also your why. When you start to recognize, like, I'm never letting those fuckers back in my life, because what was happening when I was by myself was they were partying and doing their thing, and I was stuck trying to figure out how I was going to pay my mortgage. I was trying to, I was depressed while I should have been playing with my kids. You know what I mean? Things like that. I was impatient with my kids because I had been put in such a tight spot, and it was hard for me to get out. And so, while some of these things are my responsibility as an adult, it's very challenging because I was abused as a child. And so the whys refine and they develop that discipline, which is boundaries. So boundaries with other people help and lead you towards boundaries within yourself, and which is discipline. And the discipline says, I'm doing this because if I don't do this, I'm going to go back to that. And if I don't do this, then I can't create this for me and my kids. You know what I mean? It really, the more refined your why is, instead of just saying my kids, I want it for money, I want it for, health is wealth. If you don't have your health, you don't have anything. If you don't have your health, you're not here on the planet. The thing is, when you start developing your health in order to build your wealth, that gives you more years of life, right? Because if you're going to continue on this road with no boundaries, and if codependency and lack, that's going to shorten your lifespan. But once you start and you stop that, you can actually get your life back. You can start bringing your health back. You can get your skin back, to a certain degree, obviously. Because of, I'm not sure exactly if it's cortisol, adrenaline, it's somewhere in that realm. If I have caffeine and sugar, it spikes those things. And so now what happens is I get oily roots. I really thought it was just from caffeine, but it's sugar too, which makes sense. And so I get oily roots and dried ends, okay? This also makes me very tired. And I also get stress sweat, which is so it makes me so self-conscious. And so those are things, if I want to, I still have goals. I would love to meet someone. I don't expect to meet someone, but the idea of meeting a partner sounds wonderful. But I also want to become just financially free, in the way that I don't have to worry about these fuckers anymore. Well, I understand there's always going to be a level of it. I think being able to put more joy into my life as opposed to how much sadness I've experienced, that's the expectation. There's always going to be people out there like that are entitled and selfish and immature and greedy and just cold and cruel. That's always going to be there. So for me, I want to build a life where I can either create more of a peaceful everyday lifestyle and remove the worry and the stress and balance that out. So also, when I've come from these workplaces, I can't go back in there because I know what it involves. And I used to just make an assumption that's just that business, that's just, certain types of people. But I'm recognizing that I'm seeing these types of people. It's not just someone who is stuck in a low-end job. It's not poverty-based. It is across the board. Miserable people are everywhere. Miserable people make money too. Miserable people have status. Miserable people, they got friends too. And I used to associate bullies and people who are unhappy. I used to be able to recognize them. You're miserable. You're always complaining. You never smile. You can't see the silver lining. But I recognize in these experiences that I've had that there are a lot of people that are pretending to be happy that are miserable on the inside. And those are the ones that are really hard to see. And so in my upbringing, you learn bullies look like this and angry people look like this. You don't learn that some of the friendliest of faces are some of the biggest backstabbers in your life, and they're closest to you. So my why was I want to become independent so I can show my kids that. And my daughter just told me, she's like, you don't, that's not your, it's not your responsibility. But I feel like it is. But sometimes that can put too much pressure on me as well. So like, because there's sometimes where I feel like if I don't do this fast enough, then they're gonna, like I want to give them something to go off of. Like if whatever I can learn as soon as possible, it's like I can pass it on to them. Oh, oh, that gets emotional for me. So I have to be careful to not let that be my why, because it brings me back into my emotions. Yeah, that's an emotional place, but if here's the thing, if you do something and you settle and you rush through the process, you're going to have to go back to the beginning and figure it out. And sometimes you just have to do that to get more information. There's nothing wrong with that. But you see, like part of my processing has been trial and error. I'm learning, I'm looking for patterns. I'm paying attention to my body when I eat certain things. And when I think, I thought kefir was healthy because it's, it's a certain type of dairy, but it's fermented. It's not okay for me. I can't have probiotics that have dairy in them, that are dairy rooted. I tried kombucha the other day. I can't do that either. It's still got some sugar in it, even though it's labeled as a healthy drink. It's still not. So I have to keep revising and going back to the drawing board and saying, no, this is still not good enough. I still have to, stick to this sort of tight regime, and then I got to add this in, and then while I add that in and do this at the same time, now I can build my muscles. Now my muscles can feed off the sugar, but while I'm not working my muscles, that sugar just sits in my system from what I understand, and so that's the problem. So I need to build my muscles, but then I want to go jump to Tae Bo, because Tae Bo builds my muscles, but Tae Bo is too intense on my body. So now I have to go to yoga. And yoga is slow energy compared to Tae Bo, which is fast energy, because I've done Tae Bo for the last how many years off and on. So I know what Tae Bo is. I don't know what yoga is. I don't enjoy yoga. That is the direction I move in. So that's kind of thing. I'll do another video about how I just kind of added that at the end. I'll do another video if you want to hear more about that. Let me know in the comments. But I'll probably make a video anyways for it. So I got to go. I'm going to hit with my daughter today, and I hope this helps, and I will see you in the next one. Take care.